Breaking down the NBA schedule part 2. Since some of you enjoyed it so much, here's some more random facts and statistics from this NBA schedule. We're starting off with the Indiana Pacers. The Indiana Pacers actually have two things going for them, and that is Gold Friday and their matinee game on New Year's Eve. So you're probably like, what is that? Well, apparently every Friday after Thanksgiving, the Pacers play a home game and they call it Gold Friday, as you saw from some of those screenshots in that little, graphic I made. One of the screenshots is from like 6 years ago with Victor Oladipo in it. So this has been going on for some time. It's a tradition. This year's Gold Friday game will be November 29th against the Pistons, and it will actually be towards the NBA Cup, the in-season tournament that they implemented. So this Gold Friday actually coincides with the in-season tournament. In addition, the reason that I have this picture of them playing the Bucks is because, like I said, one of their other traditions is playing on New Year's Eve. It has also become a tradition, and it's a matinee game, so the game is at 3 p.m. against the Bucks, which we know will be a big-time game because of the stuff that has happened between the two teams, and this is the 11th time in the last 13 years that the Pacers got to play on New Year's Eve. Let me correct that statement. The 11th time in the last 13 years playing a home game on New Year's Eve. The only time they didn't play it was last year that played on December 30th against the New York Knicks. Number 2, we are moving on to the Cleveland Cavaliers. For the 4th straight season, the Cleveland Cavaliers will start their season on the road. I hope you guys like these little graphics I made to go along with the video. It was tedious, especially that one with the airplane, because I had to shrink the Cavaliers logo and make sure it fit on the plane. So I hope you guys are enjoying these little graphics. But the reason I put that graphic on is because the Cleveland Cavaliers are having their opening game against the Toronto Raptors, which is why I had the Raptors court on the screen. So like I said, this is the 4th time in a row that the Cavs are opening their season on the road, which I don't know statistically if that is a lot. Like, I assume it is because it was stated in the article. But I wonder what the record is for starting the season on the road. I'm sure it's not fun. Like, you want to start at home and, just have your first game be a home game. So the fact that this is the 4th time in a row that they're starting on the road definitely can't be fun. Next, we move on to the Los Angeles Lakers. For the first time in 4 years, the Lakers actually have a balanced schedule in October and November. I don't know if it cut me off, but I was saying in October and November because the last 4 years, it has actually been pretty unbalanced. Last year, in their first 9 games, only 3 of them were home games. And as we know, in the last couple of seasons, they have struggled on the road, at least to start. The article even said they started 0-5 on the road last year, and they didn't win their first home game until November 10th. And we know the season before that, I think it was the season before that, I'm losing track of time, the year that Russell Westbrook was there, or maybe that was 3 years ago at this point, so long ago. But remember, they started the season 2-10, so starting on the road has not been very good for the Lakers. So with that in mind, this should help them get off to a better start, a more steady start, and maybe this will help them at the end of the season where it might be a little bit tougher, but they may have built a cushion enough. And I understand the games work out in the end. Everybody plays the same amount of games except for 83 for whoever wins, the in-season tournament. But we know that everybody has to play everybody in the end and stuff like that. But sometimes if you build up games early, you can figure out how to win some games. You know what I mean? When you have pressure to have to win every single game, rather than being able to rest one of those games, it can make a difference. Next, we move on to the Portland Trail Blazers. The Trail Blazers will travel the most miles, 50,000, which would take 1 month and 10 days. I hate that it cuts me off, but I was saying the reason I made that little graphic is that if you traveled by car 50,000 miles at 50 miles per hour, I looked up, to make sure online, so if the math is a little bit off, I apologize, but it said approximately it would take 1 month and 10 days to travel that at 50 miles per hour. Can you imagine that? Driving for a month and 10 days? That's crazy. So that puts in perspective how many miles the Blazers will be flying this season. And you may be thinking, well, that's unfair. The Blazers are in Portland, which, as you know, is kind of like the top left corner in a way in the United States. So they are pretty much the furthest away in a way. Like they're, pretty isolated. And so for that reason, they have to travel further to some places than other teams. So it's not really unfair, it just makes sense. So topping out at 50,000, they are the league's leader. It said that the Western Conference teams on average are traveling 41,000 miles, and the least amount of miles traveled from a Western Conference team is 41,000 miles. I wonder which team that is, I'm not sure. I didn't look it up. But there is one team who, compared to the Blazers, have a 9,000 mile advantage. And the last team we're going to talk about is the Boston Celtics. Only 7 of Boston's first 19 games come with teams over 500. Actually, I need to correct that statement. 7 of their first 19 games comes against teams who made the playoffs last season. Now, generally, teams who make the playoffs are over 500, but there are teams who make the playoffs who aren't over 500. So just had to clarify that. The reason this is kind of significant is, well, first of all, less than half the games are against teams who were playoff teams, technically. So if a team, sometimes teams start the season a little bit rocky, and some teams start the season just like they take off. So if Boston for some reason starts a little bit rocky, this could be beneficial to them. In addition, it was saying that they're not going to have Porzingis until probably mid to late December. And so kind of factoring into what I just said, slow starts, missing a key player like Porzingis, this could be beneficial to them because by the technicality of who's a playoff team, they should be better teams and they should be harder opponents. That's how it's supposed to go. So with that in mind, Boston has a bit of an advantage while Porzingis is out, or they should. So as long as they could stay afloat without him, they, will have him for the more difficult stretches of the season. So that is something to keep in mind when watching the Celtics. So I hope you guys enjoyed some more random statistics from this NBA schedule.